and take a sip of my margarita. What's happening, fellow Scuttle Buddies? We are live tonight here on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, another live edition of our podcast. Welcome, everybody. I see people starting to line up in the chat, but no one has been earlier than Mr. Cam Ray, who has put up a lawn chair and lit one or two and kicked back like Mr. Cam Ray can, waiting in line for the scuttlebutt. Let's see who's here. Hold on a second. Let's get to this over here. I think in the future we're going to need an engineer and a producer to hit all these fancy buttons. And speaking of buttons, who do we have on the other side of that comm link?
Mr. Sausage himself.
Mr. Sausage himself. Can you guys believe that Brad brought out the sausage gag on the Red 5 Twitter account? But as I said in our private chat, I might laugh, but last time we got over 20,000 impressions, so keep that sausage going.
You know, I think in this time, we're not up to 20,000 yet, but I think we're already getting better responses. If you could make me stop in my tracks for a second, you're doing good with your sausage substitution for Star Wars. So yeah, that's always a blast.
I looked down at my phone and I saw a sausage line, and I'm like, "Oh, did he resurrect that?"
So yeah, so for everybody in the chat, this is what happens when you have over 3,000 pics in your phone that you need to delete because you ran out of memory, and you're like, oh, it's the sausage meme, and I can post that. So all the polls and memes that you've seen on the Red 5 network, as well as the Scarif Scuttlebutt, you can thank my phone cleaning for those. That's why I dug those up.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. We got a sausage party. Yeah, the king of sausage in Chicago.
Abe Froman?
Yeah.
Was that our trivia? Was that our Sentry mode for the night?
That's a Sentry mode for the night. Yeah. Who is the sausage king? Thank you guys for that. Who do we have in the chat? Let's go down the line. Hello, everybody. Phoenix Night Flame, Cam Ray, obviously, Mr. Charlie Skywalker. Charlie, just listen to your podcast, and if anybody has not listened to Star Wars, Charlie's I'm drawing a blank, man. Drawing a blank. Star Wars Across the Ages. And no, I was just listening to it this morning. I was listening to a couple of podcasts on our network this morning. I think I finished up with a couple of days ago. I finished up with Salty's podcast, and I went down the line, finished up with Coruscant Radio Underground, who had an amazing guest on their broadcast. They had the Galactic Podcast, obviously another member of our Red 5 network team, and none other than author extraordinaire E.K. Johnston. That was a really great show. A lot of nice little tidbits there that they talked about Queen Amidala and Padme. Good stuff.
And WSTR had John Jackson Miller.
Yeah,
on there, and I love his work.
That's great. He really had something going there. I think the one I read was Kenobi.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they if I remember correctly, that was like the last one to be released. One of the last ones to be released right before the Disney buying out Lucasfilm. So that one was the last one not to make the cut.
That is correct. Who else do we see in the chat? Matt Vader 74 of Salty Nerd podcast fame. Matt Vader, how's it going? I hope you guys had a good record session. Was it today? Today's Thursday. Is it today or yesterday? But yeah, if you guys are curious about the Salty Nerd, they are doing a Star Wars month. Obviously, the month of May is kind of the holy grail for us nerds, starting with May 4th and going all the way down the line to May 25th, which is, for me, it's more of a Star Wars day than May 4th because I am a purist. I was 7 years old, sitting in that theater seat, watching and becoming transformed as that Star Destroyer flew overhead. But yes, Brad, we got quite a topic tonight, and I'm glad we are here with our friends, more than two of our friends, if you can,
All 5 of them.
all five of them, yeah. My brother from another mother, Mr. Cesar Rodriguez. If you guys remember, we did a Spanish Scarif podcast a while ago.
Yeah.
Mr. Cesar was one of our co-hosts during that episode, along with Raul Mares of Mexico City, a member of the 501st down there south of the border. Fantastic show. If you are of the Spanish language connoisseur, you'd check us out. One of our back catalog episodes here on YouTube. You should be able to catch that as well. Se habla español, everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you guys got to do that again too.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. What else? Who else we got? We got Pizza and Parsecs. I just finished listening to your episode, your latest one. And like I said, we got to get them on board as well and make sure that we talk to them. And because we always like making Star Wars friends, right?
Yep. And Joseph, I don't think any of us are ready for Portuguese yet. I don't think you want to hear that.
Yeah, it's very similar, but I might be able to pick up a word or two. But we'll see what happens. But yes, and Shannon's fandoms. Shannon, how's it going? I hope you are doing well, and I hope everybody's doing fantastic up here in the chat. Let's get down to brass tacks, as they say. How's it going, Brad? You know, one of the things that we talked about last time during our Qui-Gon episode, which it's already reached 100 downloads, and thank you guys. Thank you very much for checking that out. We love going deep with these topics. You know, sometimes there's just so much news that you can kind of report and kind of rehash from some of our websites, but we love really getting into deep discussions about some of these topics when it comes to Star Wars, and this is going to be another one. Isn't that right, Brad?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics. We were brainstorming on what's going to come out next, and the rule of two, which seems, well, it's always appropriate to talk about, but talking about Darth Bane, the legacy of Darth Bane, and the rule of two, how it came to be, how it's practiced, does it still count now? Those questions are out there, but it's one of my favorite topics for sure.
Does it still count now? Yeah, because there was a whole like football stadium worth of Sith in that last movie. What was that all about?
Yeah, and they have the worst seats in the house too. Like I don't know. I hope they didn't pay much for those seats because, I might gripe a little bit of how they didn't use. I wanted them to use Korriban, or as they call it now, Moraban. You know, if you had Palpatine next to a statue of, you know, Ragnos, Mark of Ragnos, or Exar Kun, or something like that, can you imagine how cool that would be? But they went with a new planet, which is okay.
That's funny. We got a funny comment there. Joseph asking which one of us is the master and which is the apprentice. We're gonna have to find out and see who survives.
Well, if Sentry Mode is any indication,
There you go. There you go. Bring that back to Sentry Mode. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Joseph, for that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get any questions ready for Sentry Mode, so we must take some questions from the group, see if they can
Yeah,
stop us.
that'd be cool. Yeah, if you guys come up with some questions for Sentry Mode, we'll definitely include them and give you guys a shout out. Price of Reason is here. That is one attractive Akbar puppet, if I have to say so myself. Price, how's it going? I hope everything is going well with you. I love your videos. And let us know when the next one is up and running, because I'm going to run over to YouTube and check that out. If you guys haven't heard of Price of Reason, yeah, a lot of good stuff there, man. A lot of good stuff.
So let's get to it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the rule of two. We hear mention of this rule during our viewing of some of the movies. We got Palpatine and Maul coming out in episode 1 saying, "At last we shall reveal ourselves to the Jedi." Obviously, some of the I guess decanonized books between Plagueis and Palpatine. But even going back to the Rule of Two and some of the legacy books that we are all familiar with. But Brad, there is one Sith Lord in particular that is credited for this Rule of Two back in the day. And I dare to venture to say his name. It is Darth Bane. Is that correct?
It is correct. So the information that we're going to talk about here, it'll be it'll go over both what we consider canon and legends. However, this time period is pretty untouched as far as canon goes. So as I answered somebody on Twitter, I consider this all to be canon. Personally, it hasn't been really refuted by anything currently in canon. So I don't see why any of this wouldn't count. It provides a little more detail. But Darth Bane, probably one of the smartest Sith ever. He's up there with Sidious for sure. I'll also make mention of the Darth Plagueis book, which if you've tuned into the Scarif Scuttlebutt in the past, you know that's one of my favorite Legends books is the Darth Plagueis book because it refers back to Darth Bane and the Rule of Two. But the trilogy that we're talking about is Drew Karpyshyn did the Darth Bane trilogy. Now, you want to talk about writers I wish would come back to Star Wars. I wish Drew would come back. He wrote all these, and he also wrote the Revan book and another book, if I remember correctly. But at least I remember the Bane trilogy as well as Revan. So he's really a gifted writer. But yeah, Darth Bane, born in the Outer Rim. For anybody not familiar with his past, he was born on the Outer Rim, a uh, just a mining colony really called Apatros. His original name was Dessel. He went by Des, um, and he lost his mother when he was very young. And what makes him a great character is his compelling backstory. He lost his mother at a young age, and then he had an abusive father. His father, it says that he's abusive. Yep, Cesar got that in the chat. It says that he's abusive. You probably, I think, probably some substance abuse there, some spice or spirits or what have you. But his his father blamed him for his mother's, death and his horrible life and all this. Um, and and beat him mercilessly, and that's why he got so hardened. Um, Eventually, his dad would call him the bane of his existence,
Mm.
and that's how we got the name Darth Bane. But he was he was a miner. He basically worked a jackhammer all day. That's how he became so built. And but at night there was one casino in the whole village that they'd all go to. He didn't realize he had force powers, but he would use his force powers just to uh, cheat people out of a whole lot of credits, and it worked pretty well for him. He eventually ended up killing a Republic soldier or officer, I think it may have been, and kind of got conscripted into the Republic Army. He eventually made his way to Korriban, though, to begin his Sith training. So quite the
So
compelling backstory.
yeah, it goes pretty deep, pretty far back. Pizza and Parsecs did mention here in the chat that Yoda, there was a Yoda arc in the Clone Wars, and he mentions Bane. We see Bane as an apparition through Yoda's eyes, and that was really cool. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, voiced by none other than our favorite Jedi himself, Mr. Mark Hamill. Is that correct? I think that's true.
I think so. If anybody wants to
Yeah,
correct us, they can. But yeah, I love that arc. There was a lot of deep introspection on the part of Yoda. The only thing I didn't like about that is they changed the look of Bane from what we
sure.
know from the Legends books. So
Yeah.
he didn't have the same look to him, but it was a specter, a spirit anyway. So of course you could change look. But yeah, Bane gives him a little bit of information about the rule of two. But that's far up. I mean, that's right before Episode 3
Sure.
that arc takes place. So yeah.
It's funny. Andy from the Holo Chronicles podcast, we were trying to figure out how to do an episode about Star Wars names. You talk about Bane, the bane of his existence. And, Star Wars has a way of naming these characters. It's very interesting. Darth Sidious, Plagueis, he's a plague. So it's kind of it's really cool. It's interesting. It gives I guess a visual characteristic to the names. That's one of the things that I like about all these antagonists. You can totally tell right away just from their name what kind of bad guys they're going to be or what kind of characters they're going to be. It's just ingrained in you when you say their name. So, Darth Bane, obviously, there's a lot you can tell just by the name alone. So, Phoenix Night Flame Maul, very aggressive, animal-like, Savage Oppress. I mean, come on. Does it get any more obvious than that?
Right. Yeah. Maul's they in the video games and other places they classify the different types of Sith, and Maul's just what you call a Sith Marauder, and they're just 100% use their anger, channeling that to their physical abilities. So that's what they do. But
So, Brad, tell me a little bit about the Sith Brotherhood. Was there any Sith before Bane, or is he the original Sith?
so yeah, no, they were. This is the time of the. This is after Revan, so this is 1,000 years before the original trilogy. A lot of the stuff people know as the Old Republic time period is 4,000 to 5,000 years before the original trilogy. So quite some time had passed since if you play SWOTOR, if you played the old KOTOR games, those were about 3,000 years before Darth Bane's time. And so, for all these millennia, the Sith and the Jedi are just going at it. And the Sith tried to reform themselves a little bit, and they formed the Sith Brotherhood of Darkness, led by a Sith named Khan. His last name was Khan. You can scream that if you want to. Kaan is his name if anybody wants to look him up. But yeah, their form of a Jedi Council a little bit. They had a High Council of the Sith, but they, in Darth Bane's eyes, they had grown too weak, too passive, um, and they had lost what it meant to be a Sith, and so you know Darth Bane trained up, worked for the Brotherhood of Darkness, and then they got into this huge war. I mean, obviously, with the Jedi, and there was a battle on the planet Rusan, and they came up um, with what's known as the thought bomb. And um, with this thought bomb, basically, it wiped out everybody for miles, with the exception of Bane. So in the legends, this is why the Jedi thought that the Sith were gone, because they had gotten all the Sith onto Rusan, and then this bomb went off, so they thought the Sith had been wiped out. But yeah, and this is Phoenix Nightflame talks about the holocron uh, that Bane found. You can't beat a story where you have one of the greatest Lords of the Sith studying from one of the other greatest Lords of the Sith. Revan able to conquer both the dark side and the light side, and here you got Darth Bane studying his holocron. That's how you can see how he became so knowledgeable and powerful. Yeah, so he wiped out the Sith and all the Jedi in the area, and it was just him left, and that's when he came up with the rule of two.
Hmm.
And
And I want to harken back to that cinematic for one of the games when they're walking the prisoner down the hallway, and then all of a sudden, uh, the Sith ships appear on the
oh
horizon,
yeah,
and the one guy goes, "The Sith Empire has returned."
yeah. So they every time the Jedi think that the Sith are gone, they just they come back again, and that was that was one of the battles that was about 4,000 years. So the KOTOR series happens about 4,300 years before the original trilogy, and then the SWOTOR series happens about 4,000 years. So there's about 300 years between Revan's time and the SWOTOR series that you're talking about there. But yeah, so they're just like basically the hemorrhoids of the universe. You just can't get rid of them. Just keep
Nice.
coming back. Yeah,
Nice.
it's a painful visual.
Thank you for that visual, Brad.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, the rule of two. When it comes to thinking about this, or I don't know, organization of bad guys and how the Sith operate, it's very I don't know. It's there's like a toxic environment where one wants to covet the other's powers and so forth. I mean, for that kind of environment, the rule of two kind of seems to make sense because you don't want to compete with other Sith that want to do the same thing that you do to your master. So it does seem like the rule of two is kind of a smart way to play it as long as that master is smart about it, cunning, controlling, and is able to get to the next level as far as what he wants to accomplish in a smart way without messing things up, if you know what I mean. And the one that comes to mind that kind of you and I talked about it before, the one Sith Lord that played the long game would be Sidious, Palpatine himself. And to be able to do everything that he did, right under the nose of the Jedi Council is pretty phenomenal feat. But getting back to the early Sith Brotherhood, why did they need? Why do you feel they needed to create this rule?
Well, it's kind of like you said, and if for anybody that's played the SWOTOR series, the online game, it's very realistic as far as the relationship among the Sith. I'm personally kind of on the fence. You thought it was a smart move. I'm kind of on the fence on it. To me, the Sith Empire, and I see it as survival of the fittest. Either you're in, but that's on a mass scale. They are all conniving. They're all working against each other. But so you're thinking about the Sith. They have the Jedi as the enemy. They do have other enemies out there as well. Mandalorians didn't really like any Force users, so they would battle, both groups. But then you had the Sith fighting amongst themselves. Um, I can see Bane's mentality that this was not working out, but at the same time, I think it bred the smartest and the strongest Sith among them. So was it a smart move? I guess the answer to that can be found in the results. Like you were saying with Sidious. Ultimately, now we can have a talk. Did it stretch that out? Did it stretch out the timeline for the ultimate revenge of the Sith? Yeah, probably, most definitely. But was it the smart way to go? I mean, Sidious was able to pull it off with all of his knowledge and experience from the last 1,000 years of this relationship, this type of relationship. So I guess it was the smart move. How the relationship works. I guess the best way to talk about that is from a quote from Darth Bane himself. He picked up an apprentice early on, Darth Zana. I'm sure folks in the chat will recognize that name. She's awesome. She's a badass. But early on, he says there are no other Sith. There never will be, except for us. One master and one apprentice. One to embody the power, the other to crave it. So that really encapsulates how the master and apprentice relationship works on the Sith side of the house. You have the master teaching the apprentice, but you can see, the Darth Plagueis book talks about this a lot. The master doesn't tell the apprentice everything. The Jedi do that. The Jedi want to bestow as much knowledge as they can to their apprentice. The Sith don't work that way.
And
They tell them a
that's
lot.
what Yeah, and that's one of the big differences. I was going to say, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got the Jedi who are propagating their doctrine to as many people as they can reach. Obviously, being force sensitive, they bring them in, they teach them. When we were together with Alex, we were talking a little bit about that and how that reflects, like the Crusades and religion on this in this world, and so there's many Jedi, and we all know for the most part what their goal was. But when it comes to Sith and the rule of two, what was the goal of the Sith working in such close proximity? And obviously, we know what happens with Darth Sidious, but back in the day, I guess, what was the goal of the Sith? That they were just it was just two of them. What would they be able to accomplish in that fashion?
So on the basic level, yeah, they would, impart some knowledge. They impart a lot of knowledge of the dark side on the apprentice. But if I was to put in one word, I would say hunger. You want the apprentice to hunger for that power. They should constantly be trying to overthrow the master. Obviously, you don't see this on the Jedi side of the house, but the apprentice should be trying to overthrow the master the entire time. They should be learning more and more about the dark side to eventually become so powerful where they can usurp the master and become the master. Um, the Jedi just graduate to the next level. The Sith, you have to earn it. Tooth and nail. Blood and bone. And so the apprentice will either become powerful enough to overthrow the master, or the master will kill the apprentice and get a new one. Or you see this with to put it in context, you see it with Dooku and with Anakin in Episode 3. If you're not powerful enough for the master, they will find another potential apprentice and let those two duke it out, and the winner gets to be the apprentice. So it is still survival of the fittest, but on a microscopic level instead of the macroscopic when there was thousands of Sith out there.
So before I interrupted you, you were talking about how the rule of two works. So if you can finish your thought, you've got these two individuals that are powerful in the dark side of the Force. How do they work? Like, how does this start?
Yeah, so I mean, the a master doesn't want to be without an apprentice for too long. So they will go out there. There are force sensitives out there, and they will seek those. And the way the Sith work is, they look for people like Bane was Dessel. They look for people that have had to grow up the hard way, school of hard knocks, that type of thing, and they've that have insecurities, anger management issues, that sort of thing, and they sort of recruit them to become an apprentice. Anakin Skywalker, had he not been picked up by the Jedi, would have been the perfect recruit for directly for a Sith Lord. They look for people that are strong in the Force but have these issues already, whereas the Jedi want to pick get them as younglings, before they're 2 years old, and raise them, straight as Jedi. The Sith want um, young kids that have been either abused or just had hard lives. That way they can really mold them and harness that anger and that rage to become more powerful. um, and and bit by bit they will give them dark side knowledge, but never 100%. So they have to find out the hard way, the other, whatever percentage of the lesson that they hadn't learned, they have to learn it the hard way. um, because the master is always holding stuff from the apprentice. You see this with Vader and with Sidious, especially if you read the books and the comics. Sidious is always holding things back from Vader, not telling him things. Not, even in Return of the Jedi, he didn't even let Vader know his plans, and their relationship had gone on for many years before that. So yeah, that's really the way it works. They, to teach and to continuously try to overthrow each other.
Yeah, so getting back to the timeline, we as fans obviously know that how this whole story kind of rolled out. Palpatine being the senator on Naboo through the story of the prequels, the original trilogy, where Palpatine and Vader are, top-notch head honchos, and then to the sequel trilogy where, apparently the Empire's gone, but the First Order's here, and to quote a line that Poe said, somehow Palpatine survived and he's back. So that period of time, for lack of a better words, is short. It's a microcosm of the entire existence of the Sith and the Jedi from millennia before this time that we're familiar with. So how long did the rule of two last before that rule was kind of, and I don't think it was broken yet because obviously Sidious and Vader were master and apprentice, for lack of a better term. So, how long before the story that we know did all of this rule of two still happen?
So the Darth Bane started the Rule to about 1,000 years
Okay.
before the original trilogy. So it'd been going on. I think it does. I mean, if it's not broken after Return of the Jedi, uh, it's
Yeah.
severely cracked. If it's not completely broken.
Well,
Uh,
Palpatine wanted to look for another apprentice for the most part in the sequel trilogy. Some people can argue that Palpatine was looking for, his offspring, which at this point, spoilers, it would have been Rey, no? So he still wanted an apprentice. He still wanted to be a master, but maybe through another body if that story had been played out.
Hard to
Yes,
say.
no, hard to say.
Yeah, so some people. I haven't read the. I'm actually just started the novelization, and some people say there's more information in the novelization for Episode 9. Might provide a little bit more insight. Um, Pizza and Parsec says, "Do you think it kind of broke a bit with Maul?" No, I don't think so. So the what you need to know about the Rule of Two, and especially Sith like Sidious, is they're always thinking ahead. And I posted this on Twitter. Twitter. What I like about Sith is they always have a contingency plan. They're always hedging their bets. So, um, so yeah, he's got Maul, but if you read the Plagueis book and stuff like that, he's already working on Dooku. So they already have Plan B and Plan C lined up. I don't think uh, Darth Maul knew. I mean, we can see from the Clone Wars that Darth Maul did not know his place in the whole thing. Darth
Right.
Maul, when we talk about Sith marauders, he was a straight Sith marauder. He just wanted to kill things. And that's what Sidious needed at the time. So he just let him do that. Sidious was, or sorry, Darth Maul was dying to be let off his leash and just start killing Jedi. But Sidious is like, no, it's not time for that. There's some great old comic books and old Maul books where he just wants to go kill Jedi, and Sidious lets him, but only to a certain extent. But yeah, I don't think it was broken at that time. I think what you see with Maul and then with Dooku and then Vader, that's exactly how the master and apprentice relationship works for the Sith. Um,
And Palpatine, like Lauren says, Palpatine was 20 to 30 steps ahead of everyone. I
absolutely.
mean, Vader was part of the looking ahead after Maul. Maul had expended his usefulness, and Palpatine was dispatched to take care of him and his brother, as we saw in those episodes of Clone Wars. And he did it well. He pretty much didn't he kill Savage
Yep, and
and pretty much left Maul wounded? But yeah, Vader was basically kind of the look ahead after Maul.
Yep, Pizza and Parsecs provide a little more clarification about Maul and what they're asking there. So yeah, in the Plagueis book, he talks about this. This is where I have to put in that that disclaimer that the Plagueis book, as much as I hate to say it, is not currently canon. So Did it really happen? We don't know. It's a legend. But yeah, they, that's one of the topics we're going to talk about. Do they break the rule of two? We're talking about it now, so we might as well just get into it. Do they break the rule of two? Um, I think so. If they don't break it, they bend it as much as they can. I think you have to, because they never want to be without an apprentice. So there will always be somebody in the wings waiting. Um, you know, Sometimes it doesn't make sense. If they all know the rule of two, why would Luke or why would Vader try to help Palpatine try to turn Luke if he knows there's the rule of two? Unless he's 100% betting that him and his son can take out Palpatine. Why would Dooku try to help turn Anakin if he knew the plot or the plan? Yeah, they bend it for sure because, like I said, it is still survival of the fittest. So they always want to have somebody waiting in the wings to try to take their. Oh yeah. So Lauren with a great quote, which is so much more powerful if you read Darth Plagueis right before. If you want a great experience, like I tell people, read Tarkin right before you watch Rogue One and A New Hope. For episode one, read Plagueis right before you watch episode one. Read the book and then watch the movie, and even the opening crawl will make so much more sense. The taxation of trade routes that they talk about, which seems really boring. You understand what that means if you read the Darth Plagueis book. But yeah, I mean, Palpatine, Lauren said 20 to 30 steps ahead. I mean, everybody else was playing checkers in the entire galaxy. Even the Jedi were playing checkers, and he was playing masterful chess. And in the Plagueis book, it kind of suggests that Plagueis created Anakin. The comic books now kind of suggest that Sidious created Anakin. We don't know. It could be one of them. It could just be the Force. But either way, yeah, they were definitely planning ahead. It was always the plan to have Anakin turn to the dark side.
Yeah. Uh, great insight there. So let's jump right into the part of the story that everybody's familiar with. Sidious, Maul, Vader, Luke. It does seem to me that Vader might have also had kind of a planning ahead, especially with Luke, whether he thought he was going to turn Luke and then both of them were going to get rid of Palpatine might be a questionable or arguable theme, but I do feel that once Vader realized that Luke was out there and Luke's significance, I think he set some plans into motion. Getting back to some of the extra material, the game, for instance, Vader Immortal, we've got Darth Vader kind of leading up to the fact that he really wanted to mess with the dark side alchemy and try to bring Padme back. He was still on that road to somehow reconnect with Padme. Um, so I guess my headcanon is that during all that, once he realized that Padme was gone and that was no longer an option, and we see that in Charles Soule's book, the Darth Vader run. If you guys haven't checked that out, it's a really great comic series. But it seems like once those options were pretty much gone, and he realized that was not going to happen. He turned his attention to Luke and his significance. And I guess, if the mother's gone, you want to keep your family close, you realize what significance Luke has to himself and to Padme, obviously, that he would turn his attention to Luke and either turning him over to the dark side or bringing him on to destroy Palpatine and ruling the galaxy as father and son, like he said in The Empire Strikes Back. I think maybe at that point, that's when the rule of two starts to kind of morph into something that we never really got to see fleshed out.
Yeah, and before I get into that, I'd like to comment on something from the chat. And Phoenix Nightflame talks about we just had the discussion about who created Anakin. Um, Over the last couple episodes, that we've had, as well as some of the chats that we've had on our Friday night chats, we talked about, the will of the Force. Was it the Force that, executed Order 66 basically to have a fresh restart? And I said no on all that. But I really like where Phoenix's head is at on this. This is something I could see the Force doing, and that's creating Anakin to counterbalance Sidious and Plagueis. I like that notion, and I'd be willing to roll with that for some personal headcanon. But yeah, for Vader, um, a lot of the good stuff does happen in the comic books. Some of the greatest moments we have right now are from the comic books. The old Star Wars run and the Vader run that was running simultaneously with it. The rule of two, I think, like you said, really starts to break down when Vader finds out that he did have a son out there. So his whole reason for going to the dark side to save Padme and to save his kids was all a bunch of BS that Palpatine had lied to him. And when he had that moment, if anybody knows what I'm referring to, it's a powerful moment. He's on the bridge of the Star Destroyer, and he cracks the glass of the viewing window when he finds out that he has a son out there. The one that destroyed the Death Star was his kid, and that's so the whole reason why he turned it, Palpatine lied to him. He said the only way you can save her is to become more powerful on the dark side. And once he found that out, yeah, that may have been for him when the rule of two was out. Um, uh, Whether he was doing that for good reasons or bad reasons, depending on how you want to look at Vader, was it just the simple Sith? I'm trying to overthrow my master, rule the universe with my son, or was it the good that was within him, just simply trying to kill the Emperor and restore balance? That's up for debate, and that's how you personally see Vader. But yeah, I think that's when the rule of two really started to break down.
What would you think would have happened if Vader did have that plan all along to bring Luke into the fold? They destroy Palpatine, and then what? Do you think that Vader would have transformed Luke to the dark side, or do you think that good that Luke felt in his father would have come out and he would have been able to almost self-redeem and kind of turn back? Would he be the one individual that pretty much fleshed all dark side from his own body, his own self, in order to free himself from that evil and bring balance back to the universe? How amazing would that have been?
Yeah, I mean, Luke was teetering. You can see it in Return of the Jedi, and if you read the current Star Wars, the one that just started back up, before the pandemic and all that. I think it's like 4 issues in. It starts right after Episode 5, and he's already getting angry
Hmm.
because of the events at the end of Empire Strikes Back, and you can see him teetering in Return of the Jedi. Um, so you know, it would have been a coin toss. He was very close. You know, we're on edge until the end of Return of the Jedi. I think there's a good chance that he may have turned. And we've talked about Leia in the past. We've talked about Leia many times. It may have to been Leia then that saved or redeemed Luke at that point, because he turned, and as we all most probably know by now, Yoda wanted to train Leia anyway instead of Luke, because she was much more mature, much more balanced than what Luke was. He was very much like his father. So I think there's a good chance that Luke could have turned to the dark side. Um, and we even see that in the Last Jedi. You see that he's that moment that he has with Ben. It's just a moment, but he thinks about killing his nephew. So he has, just the same as Kylo does. They have all these moments where they could turn. So I think Luke definitely did have it in him to turn to the dark side, and I think it would have been a pretty powerful story if Leia would then have been the one to redeem Luke after that. And I think
Damn
she
it.
would have done it
Damn it, Death. Why did she die?
right. But yeah,
Uh, Interesting stuff. So, you talked a little bit about early on. We talked a little bit about Yoda,
yeah.
and why is it that I guess this could be another subject, but we did talk a little bit about this in the our Qui-Gon episode where we talked about when a Jedi passes, you see that Jedi kind of go back to the living Force, hence the Force ghost. But this for the Sith, it didn't happen like that. There are secrets in the Force that does not allow a Sith to roll back into the bigger the bigger picture here. Is that what have you found out about that phenomenon with the Sith?
Yeah, well, the Sith aren't worried about that. Quite frankly, they want they're for the instant gratification. They want satisfaction. They want power and everything that goes with it right here and now. They are not worried about what happens in the afterlife if there is one, except for the far-thinking ones like Sidious, obviously. But the ones that are just flat out filled with rage, um, then they don't care about that. But going back to Darth Bane, there's a question as to um, did he transfer his, I think they called it essence transfer. Did he transfer that to Xana or somebody else when he died? That was another thing. And that's pretty much what Palpatine did as well. So maybe Darth Bane's lineage goes farther than people think. So you have the forward thinkers like Darth Bane and Darth Sidious. The rest aren't worried about that. One thing that's always bugged me is when did Anakin uh, learn this power? Now, when obviously in 1983, when Return of the Jedi came out, there, we didn't have all this expanded knowledge and uh, stories about the Force. So it just made sense to have Anakin come back as a ghost. But now knowing what we know, it begs a good question: when in all his in the last 20 years, 25 years, did he learn this ability? Um, he was much more of a learner. Obviously, Anakin was always a learner, so there's a good chance he got his hands on some holocrons. But that always kind of bugged me how Anakin, because like you said, Sith aren't really too concerned about that, except for a few of them. But yeah, there's essence transfer they talk about the Rise of Skywalker, but that does actually go all the way back to Darth Bane in his time.
Oh, they're called wayfinders now, by the way, not holocrons.
Those are different. Those are Force GPS. So you
Force
have
GPS
the holocrons, which are your thumb drives, and then you have your wayfinders, which are your GPS.
with aux inputs, right, Lauren? That's another podcast. Awesome. Yeah. So it is a very interesting way of thinking as far as that goes. Yoda was, showed how Qui-Gon kind of discovered that skill. And I'm sure, at some point Yoda taught Obi-Wan, and we might see some of that in the Kenobi series. That would be really, really cool to see while he's sitting there on, in the campfire on Tatooine. It'll be a whole like 8-part miniseries of him just meditating.
I mean, yeah, I'd be happy with 6 shows of him talking to Liam Neeson. I don't think we're going to get that, but I would take that.
We
You know,
might. I mean, he came back for Clone Wars. You hear him in Clone Wars, so that would be an amazing thing to, have Mr. Liam Neeson back in the Jedi robes. as we say. That would be really
And
cool.
for Matt Vader, yeah, I'm a sucker. I would still buy the Wayfinder for $39.99. Sit it right next to my holocrons because I'm a sucker like that. But
Where's mine?
Going back to Yoda, there, the first time we hear about the Rule of Two is at the big or at the, I'm sorry, at the end of Attack. Man, I can't talk tonight. First time we hear about it is at the end of the Phantom Menace. Oh, that's nice. Does yours have Darth Bane talking?
No,
Mine
but I
does.
can hook up a VHS machine to the bottom. So
Oh, okay. Um, at the end where Mace Windu and Yoda are talking, Yoda says, always, or two there are, no more, no less. The question is that I was going to pose to you and anybody that in the chat is, how did Yoda know this? How did Yoda know that there's only two? If so, I think I love
he is 900 years old. So
well, yeah, but so I'm a big fan of the phrase cognitive dissonance, and the Jedi are the most guilty of that. Um, you know, you have Mace like, oh my God, this can't be the Sith. The Sith, they're long
right,
gone.
yeah.
They've been gone for 1,000 years. So if they thought they had been gone for 1,000 years, how did he know that there was a master and apprentice at all time? So it kind of backs up my theory that the Jedi are just constantly in denial about everything. And I'm not aware personally. I think I've read 95% of the canon that's out there, at least, of any canon references to how Yoda would have known that there was this master and apprentice relationship among the Sith. So I don't know. That might just be a mystery that remains out there for the time being.
Um, didn't that apparition of Bane tell him?
Yeah, but that was many years
Uh,
after.
that was after. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was right before Episode 3 when he had that. If that had happened before, yeah, that would have made sense.
Sure.
But that happened, what, to 13 years after that
Prior.
moment.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how Yoda knew that. But
So throughout the eons of this rule of two through the Sith, were there any other instances besides current story back in the day that that rule was has that rule always been followed?
I don't think so. And maybe it looks like the High Republic is going to be focused on the Jedi, and I think it takes place. There was some question in chat earlier on. I think I heard the High Republic is 200, either 200 or 400 years before the original trilogy. Um, since the Jedi don't know the Sith are out there, I'm not sure there's going to be any mention of Sith in that, to be honest with
Mm-hmm.
you. Um, but I think it had to have been broken at times. I think there was probably either extra apprentices out there, or there were times where the link would have been broken. Yeah, Lawrence says 200 years. So if it's 200 years before the original trilogy, the Jedi at that time were under the impression that the Sith were gone. So I'm not sure if we're going to get any Sith references in the High Republic. I don't think we're going to get any extra information from that particular series.
Yeah, and we
Uh,
do see in again in that cinematic trailer that we all love from the Knights of the Old Republic, the game. We do see that shot where um, I can't remember the Darth's name when they
Malgus?
crash. Yeah, Malgus, and you see the other Sith behind him. So obviously there was no rule of Sith at that point.
No, yeah, like I said, that was 3,000 years before Bane.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, but yeah, they were trying to kill each other the entire time. Even in the Revan books and the other Old Republic books that came out a few years back, they're plotting against each other relentlessly. So you can see how that would have not been a good business model long term.
Yeah, it depends on your point of view, as Ben would say. But we talked a little bit about how, that rule of two, and even, I mean, Sidious for a while he had no other apprentice. I mean, he was working. It was tail end Darth Maul and working on Vader. for a while. So there was a period where he had no apprentice. I think he took on the apprentice after Maul left out of necessity, or yeah, I think Anakin's situation changed once he battled Obi-Wan. Anakin turned out not to be as powerful as he could have been if he didn't battle Obi-Wan. Obviously, the battle between him and Obi-Wan scarred him and damaged his body and eliminated the fact or eliminated his ability to become, a powerful individual, Sith or Jedi. And you know, he was taken on as an apprentice because obviously that was the original plan. But Vader was not as powerful as he could have been if he weren't damaged.
Well, um, I think Dooku actually was. I don't think Dooku was chosen out of necessity. I think Dooku was part of his plan, as Lauren said. Thinking 20 steps ahead. I think Dooku was. You remember that Palpatine had a very close relationship with the Jedi Council all this time, and I'm pretty sure he knew full well whether Plagueis book is canon now or not. He knew full well that Dooku was not happy with the Jedi Order, and had some angst in him, and would be willing to do this. And so I think Dooku was part of the plan. And sometimes you need a finer instrument. So you had Maul, who was just there to crush things and break things, and then you have Dooku, who's the more refined type, the kind that could actually start a rebellion, start a separatist movement, and cause a galaxy-wide civil war. So Sidious used what he had to, and he used who he had to get the job done. And talking about Anakin being weakened, Sidious 100% sent him to Mustafar to make sure that happened. He Sidious had pretty good, everything's proceeding as he has foreseen. Um, I think he pretty much knew who was going to be on the winning end of that battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin. And I think he knew full well that Anakin was going to get his ass handed to him and was going to end up in that suit to limit his power. Now, whether that made him more or less powerful, that's actually up for debate as well. Some people think it actually made him more powerful because of, just how angry that made him, and it made him more in touch with the dark side. I'm kind of with you. I think that did. I mean, if you only have what 1/3 of your body left, really, I don't think you're going to be as powerful. But I think Sidious knew that full well.
Yeah, there is precedent too. I think part of that Charles Soule series did deal a little bit with that and how Vader dealt with his pain. I know early on he was in that chamber, that rejuvenation chamber that we see in Rogue One. He was in there, kind of, I don't know, fixing his body, healing his flesh. But I think there was a passage in that book regarding Vader's pain and how he uses that even wrapped in the suit, where he is constantly in pain, and that pain feeds his rage, which makes his dark side powers even more powerful. So, yeah, there's something to be said about the fact that Vader ended up in that suit. We will never know if Vader would have been a more powerful ally to the Emperor if he weren't as damaged as he ended up being.
I think Sidious knew that Anakin, with his whether you want to talk about midi-chlorian count or not, he knew he was 100% made out of the Force or from the Force somehow. So he knew how powerful Anakin was going to be. Somebody brought up Asajj Ventress, also one of my favorite characters. Um, and so we want to talk about whether the rule of two was broken or not. She was never officially taken on as an apprentice. Well, it sort of. I don't want to make sure I get my canon and my legends mixed up at this point. Um, so Dooku withholds that title from her for a while, but for all intents and purposes, whether it was official or not, she was his apprentice. And then when Sidious, catches wind of this, that's when he has Dooku, turn against her and have her killed in that Clone Wars, and that sets up a whole lot of good stories in the Clone Wars cartoon. Eventually, to the storyline with where they tried to assassinate uh, Dooku with Quinlan Voss.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, they're always it's always in motion, the master and apprentice relationship on the Sith side of the house.
yeah, definitely. As far as functionality with this rule of two, obviously we talked a little bit about how Sidious and his plans as Palpatine, how he was patient and like a master, chess player. I mean, he was beyond a master chess. He was like Star Trek 3D chess master because, he pretty much manipulated everything from the get go and put all the pieces that he needed in place in order to accomplish what he did. But even before that, did the rule of two help or hurt the Sith in the long run? What do you guys think of that?
So personally, I think it slowed things down for them, but I think that was necessary. You're talking about people, this group had been at war with the Jedi for at least, let's see, there was the earliest stories were 5,000 years, at least 4,000 years, probably closer to 10,000 years. They've been at war with the Jedi, and that was getting nowhere. So at some point, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I think it was necessary. They needed to change up their strategy. I think it definitely stretched it out, the plan, but I think, like I said, the the proof is in the results and being able to not only overthrow the Republic but destroy the entire Jedi Order in the process. I think it was necessary. Yeah, and they definitely, as Cam says, they definitely were at their darkest. That's the way this whole relationship worked. They wanted to take each other to the next level, but that next level was, level of darkness. I really, really, really hate you, and you see that with the Sidious and Vader. Like if you listen, read the Dark Lords of the Sith book by Paul Kemp. Sidious is just torturing Vader the entire time. He's bringing up Padme and how he failed at that, and everything else. So they want to get him to that next level of being
Hmm.
hateful and angry, and their dark side ability.
Yeah. The dark
But
side is a pathway to many abilities some may consider to be
unnatural,
unnatural.
man, when I saw that in the trailer, like I cannot tell you how many times I watched the Revenge of the Sith trailer just for that line. I mean, it had to have been at least 50 times I watched that trailer. Just I cared about that more than seeing Vader rise up, off, the medical table. The other question is, the rule of two. Did it end around this time period with the Sith Inquisitors?
Mm,
Because those previously, as far as we know, didn't exist. But now we have the first, second, 10th, 50th sister
it's
and,
just
and, and brother out there. And, they're all Darksiders. A lot of those came from the force sensitive babies that were stolen in the Clone Wars time, and from the show, and before that, fallen Jedi,
Jedi.
fallen
Yeah.
Padawans. So, did the Sith Inquisitorius, as they call it, did that negate the rule of two? Definitely a lot more Darksiders out there. But what do you think? Do you think you can still technically have the rule of two when you have all these other Darksiders out there?
Yeah, because I guess they are no longer master and apprentice relationship. They're just kind of dark side minions, and that would kind of negate. And then after the fact, obviously the purpose of Order 66 was to destroy and hunt down and kill. And pretty much eliminate the Jedi from the face of the galaxy. So at that point, there is no more need for the rule of two. The goal of the dark side, the goal of the Sith would have been accomplished, and the galaxy would be in control by this one entity that we all know as Palpatine. So at that point, yeah, there's really no need for the rule of two. There was no need for the I guess the Sith, to put it mildly. At that point, that process should have been able to have stopped.
Yeah,
No
they
Jedi, that was it.
yeah, and they actually and yeah, I've said this 100 times. I think on the scuttlebutt. I hate that Plagueis is not canon because they mention this in the Plagueis book. Uh, his Plagueis tells Sidious, you know, this started with Bane and it ends with us. From Plagueis's point of view, his plan was for him to be the emperor and for Sidious to serve alongside him. But they were going to be the last two. So you're absolutely right. I think Sidious was the culmination of 1,000 years of planning. But of course, Sidious being Sidious, I mean, to tell you how evil Sidious was in that book, he kills his entire family, including his parents, basically because Plagueis told him to. That's how evil he is. So while Plagueis wanted to be the emperor and have Sidious was not going to have any of that, and ended up overthrowing, killing uh, Plagueis in his sleep and taking that spot. So I think you're right. I think that was meant to be the culmination.
Yeah.
After Return of the Jedi, you know, Sidious saying he made Snoke. Um, I don't know. I think personally, I think the rule of two ended when, with Vader and with Palpatine. Myself.
I agree. So I just put it in the chat to see if some of our friends in the chat would be willing to come up with a couple of Sentry Mode questions for us to tackle. And I think that would be a lot of fun. Anybody got any Sentry Mode questions? Let's see if we can stump our panel of myself and Brad. Cam, Ray, yes, you really do need to buy or read the Plagueis book. It starts out strong and doesn't let go, so it's definitely a must read.
Very little of that has been contradicted or refuted by canon, like the Darth Bane trilogy. So you can read that, and it doesn't really interfere with anything technically canon. Um, and while you guys are thinking of your Century Mode questions, just remember that I have competed and won in the Dragon Con Star Wars trivia, some of the hardest questions ever. So they better be good questions if you. Oh, Lauren wants to know what Century Mode questions are. All right. If you ever heard of Stump the Chump, this is what we try to do. Think of your best Star Wars trivia from either the movies or the video games or comic books, whatever, and then go ahead and ask us. We try to normally stump each other with Century Mode, but since we have all you guys here with us, if you have any favorite trivia questions from Star Wars, shoot them. And I picked Century Mode as the title because I'm sort of obsessed with Star Wars Battlefront, and that's the best way to shoot people. Rapid fire questions. Oh God, Lauren's leaving to get some questions.
Yeah,
That's not good.
that's not good. But anyways, while we're waiting for Sentry Mode, I just want to give a quick shout out. Lauren Romo is half of the Galactic Podcast. I always got to say say it that way. The Galactic Podcast, obviously, because of Lauren and cousin Andrea. They are scoring a big home run this weekend. They are interviewing Mr. Kevin Keener,
Kiner, I think.
Kiner. We all know Double K there with music to the Clone Wars and Rebels. It is an amazing, that's going to be an amazing show, and can't wait to take a listen to that. So here we go. Matt Vader from the Salty Nerd Podcast has our first Sentry Mode question, and that would be the following. Matt Vader 74 asks, who founded the Brotherhood of Darkness? Brad, that's a question for you. Who
So
founded the Brotherhood of Darkness?
I know
Is that like the
led the
Black Panthers?
yeah. I know who led the Brotherhood of Darkness. It's been God, it's been years since I actually read the Bane trilogy. I know Khan, K-A-A, two A's, K-A-A-N. Khan led the Brotherhood of Darkness. I want to say he founded it too. They all have kind of weird names in the Brotherhood of Darkness, but Khan is my final answer on that one. Let me know if I'm right, Matt, or not. I'm trying to remember who founded it.
What was his first name? Sheer.
Started with an S. Oh,
Sheer.
correct.
Sheer
Woo!
Khan. Woohoo! All
Yeah.
right.
When I just remember Shao Kahn, and to me it always sounded like Shao Kahn, like they just ripped it off directly from Mortal Kombat.
Yes. All right. Phoenix Flame coming up with the next question. Sentry mode. How many ships survived the Battle of Yavin? I'm going to have to go back into my brain and rewind to that point where the Death Star blows up and the ships are coming towards us. Let's see here.
Scare Khan. That's what it is. Are we talking about Rebel or Imperial ships?
Oh yeah, you can add Vader's advanced TIE
Yeah,
fighter
because
to that
his
number.
advanced TIE fighter,
Um,
it's the only Imperial one that you see left.
let's see.
Are you
So there
talking?
was a
Oh wait, you're talking about. So you're thinking
Falcon.
of Return of the Jedi. It was just X-wings that were left. So
No,
actually,
so
oh,
the
that would have
battle
been so it would have been Luke and
Wedge
Han and Wedge, um,
and
and well Vader on the other side. Big, yeah. So Wedge took off. Biggs died. So does that leave four?
yeah, I think it was four ships, including
Yeah, that's right.
including the
Recognize
Falcon.
Phoenix.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I think a lot of us old timers have that film kind of ingrained in our brain, so we can kind of rewind and fast forward to any part of the movie to kind of pick apart what we see there. So thank you very much, Phoenix Night Flame, for that question. Sentry mode. Anybody else got any more questions? We got 2 down, 3 to go.
Lauren hasn't come back yet.
Lauren hasn't come back. Phoenix Night Flame. Yeah, we'll say that's our final answer. What did we say? 4, 5, including Vader's
Well, so
tie.
Luke. So
Luke's
Luke's
X-wing,
X-wing, the Millennium
Wedge's
Falcon,
X-wing, the Millennium Falcon, and I
and
think there was like one more random X-wing in there in that shot.
I have to retort with Phoenix if our answer is not correct of 4, where is he getting his information from? Is it canon? Because if it's not canon, it doesn't count. So a head canon doesn't count unless we're right, and then it counts. You guys are slow typers.
Guys in the chat and folks that are listening to the podcast episode, if you guys have not checked out red5network.com, I would behoove you to go check out red5network.com, check out some of the other content creators we have on there as part of the network. You guys will find that there's a lot of really great Star Wars content creators and non-exclusive Star Wars content creators like the Salty Nerd podcast, who is a really great friend of Scarif. So go check them out.
Oh, there you go. So you win because Ro did say in one random Y-winger.
Yeah.
So useless Y-wing.
I like the Y-Wings.
Yeah, we can ask a video game question here. Video game achievement count? Oh, I don't know about all that.
What a question about a video game achievement count. We'll try it, Frank.
I mean, you're here with us, so why not?
Might as well. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button on this live Scarif episode. And you know us, we got to put these things together. So Hopefully, in the next couple of days, we'll put this together with all the bells and whistles, and we'll include all of your questions in Sentry mode and some of your interactions. Give you guys a shout out as well on the next Scarif Scuttlebutt, episode 27, The Rule of Two. Phoenix Nightflame is getting stills from the film and double checking, so that's pretty funny. Yes, double
Framey,
check.
that's a good question. In the first Force Unleashed game, you get an achievement for killing stormtroopers as you play Vader at the beginning. What was that achievement called? And I'm going to kick myself because that's one of my favorite. That probably is my favorite Star Wars game. But let's see. And it's got a funny name. I remember it's not Traitor. I don't know, I'm going to guess Traitor, but I don't think that's correct. It's got a funnier name than that.
Yeah, I'm looking.
I remember it's a funny name. I just don't remember what it was.
I'm looking at back to Phoenix Nightflame. I'm looking at a still, and it's 2 X-wings, the Falcon, and a random Y-wing pilot.
Worst day shift manager ever. Yeah. Yep. You must have just recently played that. Cam, that is a trick question. Cam,
yeah, you know what? Hold on a second. It's not a trick question. We all know who shot first. Come on.
No, it's a trick question because only one person shot. Oh, Lauren's still getting her questions ready.
That's fine.
Han shot first and only. Don't believe the special edition hype. One. So Phoenix, who was in the Y-wing? Talk nerd talk.
4 rebel ships, 1 Empire.
Yeah, we counted Vader.
Yeah. So, gotta love it. So, where are we here? We got the question from Frank and Amy. Did we answer that?
Yeah, it was the worst day shift manager ever. That was actually the answer.
Oh, okay.
Since it's not technically canon, we didn't get it wrong, but it was still a good question.
Excellent.
That's the best part about that game. That's the best part being a Sith. You know, you can just, it doesn't matter who's in your way. You can just fling them out of the way or use them.
Now, somebody posed this question, I think, earlier in the week on the Red 5 Twitter account. Why do Mandalorians show Jawas have red eyes? And I just said, I don't know, Sith Jawas? But yeah, nobody knows. I think somebody had posed the notion that perhaps each family or each tribe of Jawas had slightly similar or slightly different eye colors.
I mean, we have brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes, so I don't see why they can't be the same. They're just illuminated.
Thank you very much for that. Phoenix Nightflame, the Y-wing pilot, was a pilot named Keon Farlander.
That's actually a good name. That makes sense because I recently got back into playing Star Wars Armada with my son, and one of the Y-wing squadrons you can have is specifically Keon Farlander. So I guess that makes sense.
That is true. Stone Jawas. Yeah, that's funny. I am out of focus now.
Oh, Pizza and Parsecs asked us a question up there.
Pizza and Parsecs has a question for Sentry Mode, and it is, what was the number of the trash compactor on the Death Star? Let's see. 326.
3627? 3827?
3263627. I'm trying to like rework that line that Luke had in the movie.
I mean, he's screaming it. Fun fact while we're filibustering and trying to think of the answer, a lot of people don't know that Mark Hamill actually busted a blood vessel in his forehead shooting that scene because he was trying to strain so hard being smashed by the trash compactor. That's how hard he was straining. 386 3827. I don't know, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
It ends with a 7.
What do you think, pizza and parsecs? I know we didn't get it exactly right, but we're trying to kind of, we just got our new AARP membership, so give us a break. At last we shall reveal ourselves to the Jedi. Yeah, that was super close. Just again trying to rework that line.
326 3827. I mean, we passed the question. I mean, we're definitely maybe not 100% passed, but
yeah. It's funny though because so here's a funny story. My wife and I have a certain credit card, and the PIN numbers are the same on each. But I set it up, and I forgot to tell my wife what the PIN number was when she went to the store. And my son happened to be with her when they were shopping, and she tried the credit card, and it didn't work because she didn't know the PIN number. And my wife was calling, but my son said, "Wait, I think I know what it is."
1138.
It has something to do with Star Wars, but I don't know exactly what. So my son called and said, "What was the cell number of Princess Leia in A New Hope?" And I said, "Yeah, that's the number." And she plugged it in, and it worked. So it's kind of funny. I always wonder how many, when you call into your credit card number and, for security reasons, whatever, they ask you for the PIN number. I just wonder how many people in the world have like either 2187 or 1138 as part of their security check on credit cards and stuff. It's just a funny thing.
And if they know the reference.
Yeah.
Did Lauren ever come up with a question? Lauren, you got about 1 minute to come up with a question.
That's going to be a doozy then.
She's probably going to that old How Well Do You Know Star Wars book, the one that had all the impossible questions in it.
Yeah.
Do we miss anybody else's?
And folks, while we're waiting for Lauren to stump the crew here, I want to remind you guys, if you guys have any questions or comments about a specific topic, or just want to say hello to Team Scare, if you can give us a call at 773-234-8659. We've got that hotline set up for you guys. Call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't care what time. Just give us a call. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what is on your mind. 773-234-8659. Or send us an email, thescareofscuttlebutt@gmail.com. All right, we are back with Lauren. She's got a Sentry Mode question, and that is, what was the call sign of the clone pilot that assisted Anakin and Obi-Wan to reach the invisible hand?
What is oddball, Alex? Or Lauren in this case. Oddball, dude, copy.
What an oddball. Yep.
Sorry, Lauren. You went all that time to give me an oddball question? Come on, Lauren.
Awesome. And look who showed up, Mr. Salty Nerd himself, Mr. Salty Nerd and the Salty Nerd Podcast. Thank you for coming by. And yes, hit the like and make sure you check back often because we like to go live. Plus, we need to pay for this damn streaming service, so we got to make it pay for itself.
Lauren, to be fair, that's always the first question I ask somebody when they say they like Star Wars. That is literally the first question I ask him. Oh yeah, what's the clone commander's name following behind Obi-Wan and Anakin? It's Oddball, you stupid. And if they don't know that, then I stop talking to them
Oh man,
because I'm a
Lauren,
jerk like that.
I'm sorry, Lauren. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. All right. My phone is blowing up here. We got a lot of activity here from some folks. So let's remind the folks we had a contest going, Scarif 2001. Tell us a little bit about that and how long is it going for?
Yeah.
Um,
So if people want more information on this, they can go to my personal account. For anybody not following me yet, on Twitter at Jedi Mind Trick 79, Jedi Mind Trick 79. Look at the pinned tweet on my account, and you'll find the thread there. I think there's 8 total tweets about it. But take a look at the Scarif 2001. That's the giveaway. I'm trying to get up. We're trying to build the community up to for the Scuttlebutt to 2001 uh, followers, and I'm cheating. Roe thought that we could get it done by the end of June. I was trying to get it done by May 19th. Right now, it's not looking good for the home team. We are somewhat behind my projections. There have been a lot of folks that have gotten involved in this, and I appreciate that. Ro and I both appreciate that. But it's not hard to get involved in this. A lot of things to get involved you've already done, such as liking the Scarif Scuttlebutt and Red 5 Network on Twitter, subscribing to us on YouTube, leaving us a comment or a rating on iTunes, that sort of thing. These are all the easy ways to get involved in Scarif 2001. And when you tweet something on Twitter, just give it the hashtag Scarif 2001 and you'll be entered. And what I'm giving away, I posted some pictures. It's stuff from my own, I call it my Star Wars sanctuary. I've collected a whole bunch of things over the years, and I want to give away something good. Uh, we have Rachel, one of our followers. She's very well. I think she's probably definitely in the lead right now for the giveaway. She's trying to get the R2D2, but there's a couple holocrons pictures, some of the old Hasbro toys, 500th figure for Vader, stuff like that. Check out that pinned thread on my account, Jedi Mind Trick 79. Get all the details on Scarif 2001 and help us build the community.
And speaking of community, red5network.com is live and ready for you guys. Just to give you a little update, and if you guys don't know already, we've created a community of podcasters and Star Wars content creators, folks like the Black Squadron podcast. Check them out. We also have fellow Chicago podcasters, WSTR, Galactic Public Access. Most of them are members of the 501st, an incredible bunch of folks. We have Dr. Ravencourt from the University of Coruscant. He is also part of our network. We have us, obviously, ourselves, the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. We have our good friends, the Salty Nerd podcast. Thank you very much for all that you guys have done for us. Matt Vader is in the chat. Salty himself is in the chat. We've got Matthew Kadish and Jude, who is also part of the Salty Nerd crew. We've got the Galactic podcast, the gals, Lauren and Andrea, as I've mentioned before, and the Conversations podcast, Charles and Pat. Fun folks to hang out with. Star Wars Through the Ages, Charlie Skywalker over there, and who else we got? Jedi Temple Archives, Rob. I know a lot of you guys know who Rob is. We have him on the show from time to time. Really fun podcast, a lot of really great stuff. And one of our favorites as well, Coruscant Radio Underground, Andrew and Marisha, and all the Padawans at CRU. Lovely bunch of folks, a wonderful community, and a great network. Follow us over at Red 5 Network on Twitter as well. I think we've already surpassed 200 followers over there. We weren't even trying, huh?
Yeah, we got a couple, mostly due to sausage, and conversations about sausage. Speaking of salty, I think maybe we have one more question on Century Mode, but even if not, I can't resist a question about Star Wars. What are the major differences between the theatrical version of Empire Strikes Back and the special edition version? Obviously, the biggest difference between the two is the Emperor. You have the extended conversation between Vader and the Emperor, and of course, the Emperor actor change. They actually substituted in Ian McDermott for the Emperor, and
No more monkey eyes.
yeah, and the other major change. I don't know if it's major, but the extended scene at the end after uh, Vader's reveal of the Vader walking out towards his, taking the shuttle to a star destroyer, and the extended cut there, then preparing the shuttle for the star destroyer for his arrival. Uh,
Some of my favorite sequences of the special edition version of The Empire Strikes Back are all the extended scenery in Cloud City.
yep.
Some of the most beautiful images that I've seen in a Star Wars. Really loved how they extended the Falcon's landing too, just to see a little bit more. Awe-inspiring. It's really, really fantastic work. I love it.
Yeah, and a lot of people.
I think the Empire Strikes Back special edition is probably the best work that they did for a special edition, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too crazy about that 3D rock that they put in front of R2 in A New Hope. Although the Mos Eisley stuff is really great to look at as well, but my favorite film of all time is Empire Strikes Back. So the special edition to me is kind of like extra icing on the cake.
Yeah, I think it was the least screwed with, but they made the right changes on there. There's some people that don't like the Star Destroyer cut sequences there at the end, but I think it adds a nice little touch,
Sure.
showing Vader leaving and Luke leaving at the same time. I don't mind those at all.
Totally, totally. So, any last thoughts on the rule of two, folks in the chat, or Brad? The rule of two: the Sith Empire has returned.
Yeah, I still want to know how Yoda knew about the rule of two. I think he's holding out on us. But this is just one of those things we talk about all the time. This movie came out in 1977, and we're talking about it many decades later. And this is one of those themes that it keeps people talking. And it's good for conversation. Was it effective? This is kind of geek talk that we like, and we don't use geek as a derogatory term. That's a term of endearment for us. We love this geek talk. When did it start? Was it effective? When did it end? Did they stick with it? All these questions. These are the conversations that we like to have. These are the conversations we like to have on the Scarif Scuttlebutt and as part of the Red 5 network. So it's been a great talk, and I truly appreciate everybody coming out. We kind of did this show on a whim, decided to do it live on a whim. And so we're glad that you guys came out and helped record with us.
Definitely. And again, as I mentioned earlier, for anybody that already listens to the Scarif podcast, we put a lot of love and sweat and tears into our shows. I'm going to go ahead and take this episode and, put some lipstick on it and release it. So I know we're going to have a message about the rule of two from Alex that will include in the episode, and maybe some of our followers might leave us a voicemail. I'll also include that. Always lots of fun.
And for Alex and Alex only, scuttlebutt, scuttlebutt, scuttlebutt. Now he's got to take 3 drinks.
All right. So, Brad, once again, it was a pleasure for you to talk with me. I'm sure it was.
Always.
And thank you, everybody in the chat. This is Ro from the Scarif Podcast. On behalf of Brad and the rest of hashtag Team Scarif, Brad, take it away.
Just remember, folks, it's always sunny on Scarif, and that's the scuttlebutt.
Da 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 da.
It's not
All
that good of a
right.
show. We don't get that kind of a rollout.
I'll fix it in post.